Hello and welcome to Adobe Illustrator, the program that we are going to be working in the next few weeks. So you can see that there's some familiarity with Photoshop. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can find the welcome screen by going to Help and Welcome Screen. So today we're going to be creating a checkerboard out of shapes and the checkers out of shapes and playing around with individual shapes and seeing how they can come together to make a whole object. So we're going to create actually a web document today, and we are going to change the size to 1024 by 768. We are also going to make sure that it is in the advanced, that it's RGB, and we're going to give it a meaningful name. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we can see that in our window here that we have our tools on the left, we have our tool options at the top, and on the right we have our panels if we decide to pop them out and in. Okay, so this white space right here is what we call our artboard, and all the space around it is what's called the scratch. So the gray space is scratch, the white space is the artboard. Anything that's shown on the artboard will show in your final product. Anything that's scratched will be not shown. Alright, so we're going to create our checkerboard. So when we think about what a checkerboard essentially is it's just a bunch of rectangles put together. So we could try to draw this out and get it the specific size that we wanted. But fortunately for us, that when we click one time, the rectangle tool comes up and asks us, hey, what size do you want this to be? So we're going to go through and we are going to make our size 75 by 75. So we can just very easily type it in and click OK. So I can see that my white box doesn't look very much like a checkerboard, so I need to go and change the colors in it. So I can do that a couple of different ways. I can go down here in the bottom left and change it on the tools, or I can go up here on the right and change it in the panels. So I'm going to change it in the panels just because that makes better sense to me. So I'm going to change the outline to, the fill color to black and the stroke or the outline to yellow. I'm also going to increase the stroke size just so that I can see it a little bit better to 4. Alright, so you can see that if I click off of it, here I have my one square. We know that checkerboards are made out of traditionally black and red squares, so I need to make a red one. I can very easily do that by using this existing square that I already have. I can press the Alt key on the keyboard. It's on each side of the space bar. That's ALT Alt key. I'm going to press it. I'm going to click on my checkerboard and drag it over. So I can see that it creates two identical shapes, except for I need for this one to be red. Well, I can very easily go over to the fill color and change it to red. Okay? I can also use the select tool that I just used to create those two things. And I can use the alignment up here to make sure that it aligns the way I want it to. So I can say vertical align top, and there they're right beside each other. So the view that I'm in right now is called preview. I can also look at this through view and outline. So the outline is really going to help me decide how close two objects are to each other, and I want these to be right next to each other. Another way to toggle back and forth between those is to use Control, CTRL, and the Y key. So I'm back in preview mode. So I can use my keyboard arrows to move that over and see when I'm right on top of each other. Okay? So I can go to Control Y. They're right next to each other, right where I want them to be. So I'm going to take these two squares and I'm just going to duplicate them until I have 8 going across. Hold down the Alt key, move them over. You can see that I have the green intersect, the guidelines that kind of help me line them up correctly. So I can take this whole row, select them all by drawing kind of the box around them, and group them together to make them one, and then hold down the Alt key and move them down one. Now the interesting thing about this is I need for it to be, instead of black on black, I need for it to be black and then red right here. So I can go up here to transform, and I can rotate them and choose 180. And there it is. So I have the first part of my checkerboard. So we are going to select all of this, hold the Alt key down, move this down, Alt key, move it down again. So it gives me 3 segments, and Alt key, and move it down again. Okay? The last thing you want to do is you want to group all of this together. Object, group. Alright? So you can go over here to your layers, and we can give this layer a name, a good name for this. I just double clicked right there where it said layer 1 is checkerboard, and we're going to lock this so that it can't change. Okay? We can also go over here and duplicate this layer to create our checkers. So a good name for that layer would be checkers. And we don't want to lock it so that we can make changes to it. Okay, so we'll always have our checkerboard down there in case anything messes up, and we can, kind of start over where we need to. Alright, so we're going to go through and we're going to create our actual checkers now, and we're going to use the ellipse tool for that. Again, we're going to do like we did with the squares, and we're going to type in what we want it to be. So we want our individual things to be around circles to be, I believe, 50. Yep, 50 by 50. Okay, you can see that it's red with the yellow outline, which is needs to be a little bit different than what it currently is to show up on the red right here. So we can go in and change that color to a blue. We can also type it in what we want to be. So we could also change this to 51, 51, and then change this one down here to 153. Alright, so we can type in our red, green, blue values as we see fit. Alright, so we have this one, and we know that by what we just learned that we can create several of these based on this one. So we can hold the Alt key down and create several of them, which is what I'm fixing to do, but I'm going to pause it so you don't have to watch all that. Alright, so you see that I very easily went through and used the same methods that we had already used to create all my sides. Now, I could create the others, go and create them individually, or I could select all of these over here. Now, you don't want to group these because we want to make sure that they're movable later for our players. So what we are going to do is we are going to use the Alt command, and we're just going to move them over. Now we can see that if we want them in the black squares, obviously we're going to have to flip them over. So we know how to do that. We can go up here to Object, Transform, and rotate it 180, and there they are in the black squares like they're supposed to be. Okay? We can also go through and say while they're already selected, obviously they need to be a different color. So we can go through and change the color to a lighter color so that there's more distinction between the different checkers. Okay, so I can choose another one of these, get it together, wait, Alt, and then do it. And I can actually start creating my crown pieces by using the star shape. So I'm going to use the star tool and click over here, and I'm going to choose 150 by 75. Let me make sure these are the correct measurements. And I'm going to choose 8 points on this. So my star is pretty big right now, and I need to shrink it down and make it a little bit smaller. I can also click over here and rotate it around. Rotate it around so that it kind of is more centered where it needs to be. Alright, so I'm going to go to Object and Transform, and this time I'm going to scale it from 100% all the way down to 15%. So you can see that now it definitely fits inside of what I need it to fit inside. Okay? So this part is a little tricky, selecting the actual part that you want to move. You have to click on it, select it, and then kind of move it up to where it needs to be. You can also, I think we're supposed to make this clear to see through. Alright, so here we have our big piece, or our crown piece. We can also select it, and you probably want to group that together. And you'll just repeat the process over here for the same one. Okay? So something really cool that you can do is you can say, you know what, these colors are great for you, Miss Wade, but they don't really fit my style. You can use something called the magic wand tool, and you can double click on it, and it brings up what's called, it'll select all the fill color, but we want the tolerance to be really low because we want it only to choose these specific colors. So I can choose, click on the red, and it selects all the red for me. Okay? I can go through and say, you know what, I love pink, so I'm going to change it all to pink. And be like, I really would like to know what other colors go well with this. So I'm going to look at my color guide. Now this color guide can be very beneficial for some of you that struggle with colors. Or with me, I think everything needs to be pink, turquoise, or purple. So you can go through and change these to other colors. So I can say, you know what, I don't really like this black right here. I'm going to choose all the black, and I'm going to choose it to this darker pink. I'm also going to go through and make all of these are this blue color. I'm going to make them green. And all of these that are this color, I'm going to go through and make them this shade of blue. Okay? So what it does is it goes through and selects all that stuff for you. You can do the same thing with your color here. Use the color guide. You can click down and see that there are different contrasts. There's, things that are monochromatic, things that go together, things that don't go together. There's complementary that goes together. And then there is contrast, which really kind of highlights the colors that are in the range. If you want to go through and change all the yellow, which is just kind of hideous of a color. If you want to go through and change all of the yellow, you definitely could to something a little bit better. Like, I don't know, turquoise. It's a little bit trickier with this one because the colors have already been kind of set there. Alright, so you can see that all these colors are kind of going together a little bit better than they were previously. The last thing that you want to do is make sure that you save this. Save as. We're going to save it in its native file. In our Intro to Graphic Design folder, we're going to create a new one called Illustrator. Checkerboard is fine, native file is fine, and make sure we're in our Illustrator folder and click Save and OK. The last thing that you may want to do is to be able to file and save this for web and devices, which is a trick that we can do. So we're going to click Save. And this time it's going to save as a GIF for us. So we're going to go ahead and click Save. Alright, and that is it. Enjoy creating your checkerboard.